Hi there, you're through to Simon Ekin. I'm going to be introducing myself by way of a pitch deck. I'm a speaker, coach, author, facilitator, and let me show you what I've got. And the rationale behind this is just to lay it out in a really clear, simple way. I don't know if you have the difficulty of sometimes when people ask you, what do you do? And it's like, ah. And oftentimes, I've been guilty of looking at it from my perspective instead of the customer's perspective, which is this is my attempt to do that. Okay, so what you can expect is, first of all, positioning, like why me, a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know anything about me. What are the problems that we've seen? I say we, myself, and my associates we've seen in the workplace. And then what is the projection? What is the probable, what we call the probable almost certain future? And then what is the solution? What are some of the clients that we've worked with that have been able to produce those kinds of solutions? And I'll give you some proof of that in the form of some client testimonials. And then let's talk about our call to action. What next, if anything? Okay, so here goes. Here's a little bit about me. I've been a speaking and performance coach since 1999, working with executives, business leaders, business people mostly, but also some foundations and some non-profit organizations and charities as well, and schools. I've worked with hundreds of clients over the years. And I remember when I first started coaching, people said, I'm a coach. And they said, what, cricket or rugby? And that was it. And that was in 1999. I'm also a Six Thinking Hats De Bono certified trainer. For those of you who may not know his work, he wrote over 60 books on lateral thinking, and his main thing was you want to work out how do human beings think. Quite profound work and really, really great material. I lead a program called the Courageous Public Speaking course because public speaking, in my view, is such an important skill. And so I help people to do that. And then I've delivered a TEDx talk, and I'm also an author of a book called The Art of Courage. I'm a former British Army officer and Trans-African cyclist. And then I've delivered over 1,000 talks to random groups of strangers, really promoting the whole notion of courage. So, what is the problem mostly? Well, typically it's communication. That's the biggest one. Mark Twain said, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And as we all know, communication leads to lots and lots of misunderstandings and breakdowns. And then there's a lack of integrity. And by integrity, I don't mean morality or ethics. That's a given. I'm talking about integrity when we say we're going to do something, do we do it? Or do we make a whole bunch of excuses or just kind of wash over it? So that goes along with accountability and responsibility. And of course, when that happens, there's a disengagement with employees and leaders and staff. And then what we have is a lot of inauthentic, ego-driven leadership to produce the result, and what's needed in this day and age is actually more compassion, more listening, more empathy. And that's a huge part of the work that I do. And then challenges navigating what's called a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. And if you're waiting for it to not be a VUCA world, well, good luck with that one because it's just getting more and more uncertain. And of course, fear. Fear spreads, leads to breakdowns in trust, burnout, disconnection. It costs companies millions. For example, there's a stat that I heard which was $38 billion a year. It's a staggering number. Is attributed to wasted time in meetings. If you multiply how ineffective meetings are and how many people are involved, it's a real shocker. And particularly the work with the Six Thinking Hats really, really helps run efficient meetings that produce results. Typically, 70% of employees avoid having difficult conversations with their managers, colleagues, or direct reports. 58% of employees say they'd rather look for a new job than face an issue at work. I mean, that's a real shocker, isn't it? I think in with Generation Z, who we have in the workforce now, and woke culture is like, I don't like it. I'm going to go home early. Like, oh, find someone else another job. And we need to understand each other because unless we do, there's going to be more attrition, like we're seeing. Around 7,500 US dollars or 75,000 South African rand per employee is lost in productivity. Only 10% of leaders feel confident in navigating high stakes conversations. And there's that number again around annual meetings. So, what is the possible predictable future that we face? I say possible predictable future because we're creatures of habit, and what happens is we tend to think that tomorrow will be different today, but actually, the reality is we have around 60,000 thoughts a day, 75% of them are negative, and 90% are repetitive. So it doesn't really bode well for new thinking and new neural pathways and new synapses that produce, as we actually rationally know, we can produce some extraordinary results if we could just stop with the conditioned way of thinking. Adversarial, I'm right, you're wrong, my idea is better than yours. It just doesn't help. And hope is not a strategy. It's what I once heard, the raw material of the powerless. I hope tomorrow's going to work out. I hope the government does X, Y, Z. We can't be in hope. We've got to make a stand for things and make them work. We are what we repeatedly do. And here's a question for you. What is your likely predictable future? If you carry on doing what you're doing in your business, what's going to happen? Is it going to be extraordinary or is it going to be ordinary with incremental increases, hopefully, predictable increases, or is it going to be extraordinary? What's your desired or unlikely future? And there's some great stories that we know in business about how, for example, Kodak, how they didn't move with the times and they got completely left behind. A Kodak moment. It's history now, right? So what happened is that they stuck with what they believed would be right and they weren't flexible. They didn't change their mind. They didn't create an unlikely future. So the solutions and benefits, well, typically what we'll do is get to the source of your challenges. Human beings don't have a great relationship with reality. We tend to have reality and then be a lot in emotion and meaning and interpretation. So if we get to the source of it, then we can do something about it. We'll generate ideas that can change literally everything or anything. One small idea can completely change how your business works and how you work and your people work. We'll speak with integrity, power, and truth, and how to lead in this VUCA world, this volatile, uncertain, ambiguous world, and inspire trust and action. When trust is there, guess what? Great results get produced, don't they? And to create connection and high performance, growing your business, growing your people, and growing your customers. And here's a couple of examples of people that I've worked with or had interactions with. Peter McClary was the former CEO of Tiger Brands, and I gave a talk to a leadership conference of his, and he said, courage is easy to talk about, but it's hard to live. And Simon's work had a lasting impact on our leadership team. Major General Andrew Keeling from the Royal Marines said he's seen battle in courage. Simon inspires us to do it every day. And I'll explain more about this word courage, which is absolutely integral to the work that I do. And in your life as well, of course, because we either live in fear or we live in courage and we get to choose. Kim Moore, HR manager for Dimension Data, said Simon has a remarkable ability to engage an audience to overcome their fears. And JP Duminy, a former South African Proteas cricketer, said, my biggest dread was impromptu speaking, and now I love it because of what Sai taught me. He's a remarkable man who literally on a moment can come up with a great story. And then finally, Mike McLennan, director of a Transform consultancy, came from an advertising background. And he said, in 90 days, my sales grew by 60%. Sai's approach is so simple. I wonder why I wasn't doing it already. Isn't that the truth for so many of us? We know what to do, and then we often do something different. And the whole point of having a coach or an accountability piece is that we actually do what we say we're going to. We're far more likely to do that. We run a little faster, don't we, when we go running with someone as opposed to running on our own. And Grant Briley, VP of Sales of a company called Monactive, worked with a few years ago. He said, size coaching helped my new sales team to deliver 2 record quarters in a row, 300% quarter-on-quarter growth. It sounds fantastic. It was fantastic. It was very, very simple. Okay, our solution. What's the process? Well, first of all, we'll identify your goals and intentions, as that's really good to focus on the possibility. And then what we do is we face the reality of how things actually are at the moment and what's going on. And then we'll explore the various options available to you. It could be leadership development, it could be a talk, it could be coaching, it could be six thinking hats. But I don't want to come in and sell anything to you. I want to hear where your concerns are. And then finally, to establish what I call an action plan, not a plan, an action plan. Okay, so thank you for listening. Please reach out to me. Here are my details, and I look forward to connecting with you and possibly working with you. Thank you.